as an individual, for me, something that's been very important from early on in my life is the sense of freedom and this sense of independence. And one thing that I learned very early in my life was that there is no true independence without financial independence. And especially growing up in a very patriarchal society, financial independence was my only way out of it. And technology was a great enabler for that.
What will you do when your money works for you? Welcome to the Tech Girl Financial Podcast with your hosts, Victor and Kim Gaxiola. From the home office in California, here is Victor and Kim.
You know, season 4 is meant to be a season of lots of exciting innovations, and we promised at the beginning of the season that we were going to get some special guests on the program.
Yes, that's right. So here we are.
Here we are. So our special guest today is Asra Nadeem, and she is the first, this is awesome, the first Pakistani venture capitalist and a global speaker who has been on the TEDx stage. So she's actually done one of those, boom, TED with people watching and everybody, talking, excited about what she has to say. She's the current president of DraperU, which is a pre-accelerator, and the co-founder of Opus.AI, which is a deep technology company that's working on some exciting things that she's going to share on this podcast. So without further ado, we'll get to our interview with Asra.
Welcome.
So joining us today, it's such a thrill to have Asra Nadeem. Welcome, Asra.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
So why don't we start from the very beginning? We've got you as a special guest. We're talking about technology and innovation. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in Pakistan, which is a country right next to India. And like a lot of women in my generation, I was the first girl who went to college. And my dad actually says it's the best. He's like, I had two options. I could either send my girls to school or I could buy fancy cars. And we're like, yeah, thank you. The cars weren't bad, but thank you for not buying those fancy cars. So I got my first access to technology was very early. So I got a computer and all of a sudden this whole new world opened up for me because as an individual, for me, something that's been very important from early on in my life is the sense of freedom and this sense of independence. And one thing that I learned very early in my life was that there is no true independence without financial independence. And especially growing up in a very patriarchal society, financial independence was my only way out of it. And technology was a great enabler for that. So very early on, I was completely hooked to MIRC. I ran like channels and groups and almost like a unofficial e-commerce business off of that. Like every young person who wants to change the world, I wanted to go into politics and studied economics, and that didn't really, gel well with my technical ambitions. But right out of college, I got hired by this guy who just moved down to Pakistan from Stanford, and he was building the Yahoo for Pakistan back in the day. And I had no idea what a technical startup was, what being a product manager was, but I knew that I could talk to customers. I could hear what the customers wanted and then implement that feedback into the product that we were building. So that was my first introduction to like actually building a tech product or a tech company. And I was the fourth employee. We raised venture capital from DFJ and a few other investors in the Valley. When I left, we were 150 plus people. So, and from there on, it's always been how can we take technology and really elevate and provide not only new opportunities for people, but also use it to kind of hop into leapfrog into the future that we all want.
That's so amazing. I mean, there's so much there that you have just told us in your introduction that I would love to run with. But I think the whole idea of independence and freedom through finances and education and work is huge. Those are things we really believe in. And, I sit and watch right now what technology innovation is doing for the education environment and say, wow, we're going to be able to expand education probably beyond the traditional way and get it out to so many more people.
100%. Like, so one of the things I always tell people is like education or mentorship, it is a very it's not like a modern concept. Like Socratic models of learning are some of the best ways to learn anything, right? Where you learn through apprenticeship or something. But all of a sudden, education just became, not all of a sudden, but over the years, the last couple of, I would say, decades, education has become more like a cartel everywhere. And and it's interesting that now technology is kind of just like it's doing to a lot of industries where so when I look at innovation and that technology can bring to industries, it's always where cost of service is really high but quality of service is really low, and education is one such industry. And I love what's happening. There's so many more opportunities now available for people. And not only that, you can learn skills and actually get employed. And that trend of having to go to a good college and only then being able to land a good job, that's also changing.
Yeah, and I was going to go back because I agree with Kim as far as there was so much to unpack there with the freedom and the education being an outlet. Your dad made a tough choice, as a father, but he made the right choice. I think he made the right choice. I'm curious as to what car he would have gone with. The guy in me kind of came out thinking, oh, I wonder what car he had in mind. But what I wanted to say is, in technology, females in technology, women in technology, it's already a minority. And I have to imagine that in Pakistan, it sounds like you were somewhat of a pioneer. What was that as far as a challenge that you overcame? Tell us a little bit about how you did overcome that challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, so for example, my mother never told anybody what I did, because for her, she was sending her kids to college to be scientists, doctors, lawyers, so like very traditional fields. And she could not for the life of her comprehend why. And technology companies, especially startups, are very, very time consuming. So it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's something that you're working over on the weekends. It's something that literally consumes you if you're really enjoying what you're doing. And so especially from a family standpoint, they didn't know what I do. And even today, when I talk to them, she has a hard time, or like a lot of people have a hard time understanding, because now my career has kind of merged between being a tech entrepreneur and working in venture capital. And that's really hard, because do you work in a bank? What do you do? But then at the same time, back in the day, I was the youngest person in my company. So as we hired more and more people, it was always a cultural challenge for them to work with me. And then once I started going out and talking to customers about the product that we were building, that was an even bigger challenge, because there's a lot of we were telling them that, oh, this is something you've been doing on pen and paper and we can automate that for you. So that itself is a challenge. And then like a young 20 something year old coming in and being like, I can do your job better than you, that is that itself is challenging. Add that to a patriarchal culture. There's been times when I came back in tears from these meetings, and because I was like so demotivated, demoralized, and just like so put down by the people that I was trying to convince to use our product. And it had nothing to do with the product, but more to do with their gender bias. And fortunately, I had an amazing CEO, and he was like, no, you've got this. And we'll always put you in front of these people till they get comfortable with it.
That is so great. Oh my gosh, it's so funny because I'm laughing at what you're saying and thinking, culturally there are differences between Pakistan and the United States, but some things aren't that different because I have a niece who was thinking about, she's at Purdue right now, and her dad couldn't understand her track, her career path. And he's a doctor, and he can easily understand. You go to med school, you become an intern, a resident, and then you're a doctor. And even a lawyer would be something he could understand. But her career path wasn't so clear to him. And then she finally changed her mind to become a PA. And now he's really happy because he understands how she'll make money in the future. So,
And it's even harder if you're like a creative person, right? Because my younger brother, he's a musician, and my mom just feels like there is no career prospect for him whatsoever. And, or like, especially like I see a lot of younger people struggling with, they are earning good money through social media, and they're still struggling with family pressures for going back to like whatever degree they were working in, or not learning any other skill. So I think there's going to be a cultural shift. But to your point, I mean, it's not any better in the US. Yes, it's more welcoming, but there's an other kind of discrimination that happens, which is sadder in the sense, right? Because in my head, at least, coming from a third world country, it's like, you have the best of everything available to you. What's your excuse for being this racist or this closed-minded?
There's a quote from Sheryl Sandberg, in her Lean In book a long time ago that says, if you're in technology, don't think you're going to climb a ladder. Your career is more like a jungle gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, that's what we're talking about here. And I think it's very hard for parents to understand, where are you going? There's no clear-cut path. You may start out in large technology and then jump over to a small startup or vice versa. And things are always looking different.
Right. They are.
And I think if you have that mind, it's fun and you like the change and you're adaptable, then more power to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'd like to bring attention to the fact that a couple years ago you did do a TEDx talk and entitled "Be the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You." And I think that probably really might have been a, hey, Mom, look at me. Hey, Dad, look at me. I did a TEDx talk. Tell us a little bit about that experience and what it's done for you, in your career and perhaps just upping your profile in this space.
Definitely. So for me, one of the things that I never did or never had the time was to tell my story. Because in my head, I just had to get somewhere. It's still the same. Like, there are things I have to get done, right? And it's never been about, okay, how did I get here? But my sister, when I look at her, a lot of things that she has, like, and this is something she told me, that a lot of things that have been made easier for her were because of how I took the brunt for everything, and made it easier for her and other people around her. And I think, especially in Pakistan now, there's a whole bunch of women who are thinking about starting careers, or who've been housewives for a very long time and are now thinking about going back to work into technology. And for them, one thing I think we all have to kind of understand is that this motivation. So again, that's like me not understanding like this American concept of somebody else being able to motivate you. Because for me, you are the best thing that ever happened to you. You're the only one who can save you. You're the only one who can enable you to do X, Y, and Z. And that motivation and that drive that you're looking for, that comes from within you. It has to be a point you have to prove, it has to be a milestone you have to achieve, but all of that is very driven from who you are as a person. And if you elevate, especially women, we don't elevate ourselves enough, and we don't pat ourselves on the back enough. And I think just starting by doing that to ourselves, we can really change the course of what opportunities come our way. And definitely doing that TEDx talk was pretty amazing. My mom was, for once in her life, she was very proud, and she kind of got what all of my rebellion all my life has been about. But in the other sense, it's also enabled me to help a lot of upcoming startups and people within Pakistan, and not only in Pakistan, in other parts of the world as well, and just really be involved in the early tech scene.
That's great. And, when you talk about launching into new area, you're currently president at DraperU, which is a pre-accelerator. You're co-founder of Opus.AI, which is the deep tech company that is developing some exciting things. So can you tell us a little bit about Opus.AI?
So with Opus, what we're building is a core technology that enables anyone, so like you and I, to be able to write something, and then it converts what we're writing into a full 3D scene. And this can be turned into a short film. So short films are what we're starting with. And then in the future, you can build games off of it. You can build whatever media you want out of it.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it just opens up because how we started on this was we wanted to build a game ourselves where we could have new environments and new challenges auto generate. And one of the things we realized, and again, I have a small background in film, TV, theater. So one of the things I realized is that almost 98% of the scripts or stories that are written every year never get made into anything, because the cost of producing content is so high. And CGI, as much as we think it's changing or enhancing our experience, is extremely expensive. So companies like, for example, Netflix spend almost $170,000 per minute producing content. Wow. And and it's ridiculously expensive to produce games or anything. Like Disney spends over $1 million per minute on content that it produces. So how do you democratize that, or how do you change that? And again, thinking from a technology perspective, if you automate the way these 3D assets are generated, if you automate the way environments, whatever you see on green screens, all of those things are generated, you can really change the paradigm. And not only that, also open a lot more opportunities for people. Because one of the things we often hear about AI is that, oh, it's going to take away all the jobs. How I think about it is that, yes, it's going to take away jobs, but it's going to take away the boring jobs, because humans were not designed to wake up every day and do repetitive tasks. One thing that we as humans have that nobody else has is our sense of creativity. And I think what automation or AI will do is enable us to live our best lives by by bridging this gap between things that we're passionate about, our hobbies, with what we actually work on. So we can really enhance our creativity and create a lot more jobs in that direction.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I've seen that this pattern is starting to show itself. And what it comes down to is this storytelling narrative. It's the fact that we are really driven when it comes to content, not just, in movies or in entertainment, but even now as consumers, that you look at platforms like TikTok or even Snapchat, or even how, I would say the Gen Z or the millennial generation is consuming information, that they like the storytelling techniques, whether it's a meme or a short video, to understand either a complex thought or a complex idea, or they like to kind of mix the entertainment with the education. And so, especially now, I think with in the times of COVID-19, as people are home and they're able to consume more data and information and stories, that even the use of something like Zoom in our communication is becoming more and more commonplace, that it's something that I think we're readily will accept in other areas, whether it's media or entertainment or advertising or technology.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, on Saturday, I attended this amazing event on Zoom, which is these New York theater people coming together and building this like escape room right like experience. And this is like the best use of Zoom I've seen so far. So you go into a room and there is a magician in one room. It's like the best of New York nightlife meets Zoom. So there were magicians, there was musicians in other rooms. There was like karaoke going on. Then there were drag queens doing their thing. So it was, and then there were actors like reading out screenplays, and you could hop on from one room to another as you got more clues within it. There was 1,000 people online, so the chat was amazingly crazy, and it was such a unique opportunity for all these performers and all these people to come together, since most of the theaters are now closed and nightclubs are closed. But also what it does is it brings this like, if you're performing in front of 200 people, all of a sudden now you have access to 1,000 people, and you can have access to 1,000 people every day.
Right. Wow, that sounds so amazing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating shift, and this is something that I always think is amazing about the creativity of people. That when everybody kind of is on the same level playing field, from the standpoint that, hey, the only way we're going to be able to communicate with each other is through this online Zoom, and then people get creative and find ways, as you experienced this past weekend, of using that technology to create a different experience. The same thing going back to the Netflix. Netflix has quickly understood that they're changing the entire distribution model of entertainment. You saw what happened with the Martin Scorsese film that he did. The name escapes me, but that it actually probably got more views and more people actually experienced the movie through Netflix than if they would have gone to the movie theater. And then Apple Plus released Greyhound. They actually purchased Greyhound, which was a movie that was going to have a theatrical release, and they put it on Apple Plus, which is a streaming service. And both movies probably got a much larger audience than they would have if people had to actually pay money to go to a theater and experience it that way. So it's making the adaptability of adjusting existing models, changing them, and then in a small way, or maybe even in a big way, changing industries.
So I imagine, I think the business sense in me thinks about what you're offering, and I always think, oh wow, well this could help many industries. It's not just about film. Its applicability is everywhere. So how is that for you in terms of when you're ready to market it? Like, where do you go first?
So the first thing we're going into is essentially fan fiction. And the reason for that is that since this is frontier tech, it's not like a solved problem. So we can't give it to a consumer right away and be like, yeah, go ahead, generate whatever you want. Because what if you want to generate a pink elephant on top of Eiffel Tower, right? That's still 2 years out. So how we're looking at it is being a media company ourselves and producing content. And that content in the beginning is around serialized fan fiction, and then kind of moving on from there to working with more, and we're already working with 2 or 3 film writers who've written scripts for different movies, and taking those scripts and building those into movies. So we're looking into launching our first fully AI generated film sometime summer next year.
Wow. That's amazing. And one of the things that kind of brings a thematically about this is And this is, I think, one of the biggest changes that we've seen even in the last couple of years is this idea of people themselves being storytellers. So for the most part, a lot of us were more consumers of content, and now we're becoming more creators of content. And so tools like Opus.AI, that might actually provide an easier way of someone to be able to kind of write a script or create a text, and then that being translated into an actual visual. I can't help but think, Kim, in finances,
Yeah.
in our situation, when it comes to financial planning, we often talk to clients and start talking and envisioning a future for themselves. I can imagine us articulating that plan and then it actually creating a movie of that plan, or at least a visual of that plan, and so people can visualize and see themselves in that place.
I know. I think one of the things that's challenging for us is always when we ask somebody, how do you see yourself living when you're 65 and no longer going to go to work? And if you're working and you're in your 40s, well, you can't even see past next week.
It's abstract.
It's so abstract. So it would be so cool for people to actually create like a film about what they would like to see happen to them in the future, because in my mind, that's the motivating factor. If you talk about self-motivation, and you have to bring it back to, if you can't visualize it, you're less likely to be motivated to get there.
That's a very fair point. Not everybody is very we process information in different ways, and being able to visualize things is extremely important. I have a great friend who's an economist, and when I showed him our demo, his first thing was, oh, so I can actually use this to teach economics to my students. I don't have to talk to them anymore. And I was like, okay. He's like, I can build models on this, and I can build like predictive models on this. And I'm like, yes, you can, but not that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of functionality to something like this, because if you look at any system level automation, it's done on simulated environments. And right now, also generating like simulations or environments is extremely expensive, and is only used in advanced tech like autonomous driving or something. So making it easier to simulate stuff itself opens up a whole new realm of possibility.
And I think as it's just a matter of time, because as we were talking about this, I was just, in my brain is fired up right now, just thinking of all the applications, and knowing that most technologies, they get faster and they get less expensive. And so even in that scenario of having a couple sitting across from us and us asking the basic questions when it comes to financial planning about the future that they envision in retirement, I can completely see a big screen TV and me asking the prospect, hey, do you see yourself in a house in the mountains or the beach? And as they answer, the visual is showing a beach house. Do you envision having a dog? Yes. What color is the dog? And then just it creating that story, because, how exciting would that be to be able to really give them that visual? And I know it's only a matter of time for the technology to get there so that these things are going much faster.
Oh, 100%. And even from the time that we first tried to work at this, when everything was expensive, like 5 years ago, the cost of computation has come down significantly. And there's been a lot of advances that have been made in NLP and other like procedural design and other aspects of what's required to do this, that it's finally made it possible. It's still frontier, but it's no longer it's possible.
So it seems overwhelming what you're trying to build in my head, because I know nothing about it. What are your biggest challenges?
Biggest challenges are definitely in terms of, because right now the only thing we're focused on is resources, right? Because we're essentially taking everything that artists or everything that is done by hand and automating that process. So finding people who have that like interesting intersection of being able to having that creative spirit, but also being able to understand geometry, being able to like understand data and mathematics, because a lot of it is just like by the end of the day it's just math, right? It's like a 3D environment. So resources are definitely, it's still a very, very new field, and resources are extremely expensive. So our biggest challenge is like finding resources, but that's kind of why we're doing these like conversations. So if there's anybody who's interested, we can reach out to them and have them come work with us.
Which brings us to our last question here, Azra. Is people are interested in learning a little bit more about you, the companies and the organizations that you work with, what would be some of their best resources to reach out?
I have a website. You can reach me out on there, or any place where you see me, Twitter, Instagram, or my email. I reply to almost all messages that I get.
And we have one last question for you, because this is the season of innovation. What technological changes or piece of innovation are you most excited about for the future?
So I am definitely very excited about the future of like communities and cities, given all the adoption that's happened in the last 3 months. My answer would have been very different, like beginning of the year, but given the situation and how people are now adopting to technology much faster, I think it opens a whole new realm for, especially in mobile first markets, for financial products, for financial innovation, for e-commerce innovation, for supply chain innovation, how we think about planning cities, growing food, entertainment. So there's like a whole bunch of stuff that still is out there that's not built. And that opportunity itself is extremely exciting.
Wow, that is
Very exciting.
interesting.
Well, Azra, we will definitely want to stay in touch to hear how things are developing with all these different projects, because it's been so fascinating talking to you about innovation in the future. So on behalf of everybody at TechRoll Financial, we just want to thank you for being a guest today on the program, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting me. This was amazing. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Okay.
Likewise.
Well, take care.
All right. Thank you.
What an outstanding woman in technology.
Yeah, that was fun. Like I said, my head is hot right now with all the ideas and applications of the things that they're developing. And, as she was talking, it was just kind of exploring these new areas of the storytelling narrative and how businesses, including our own, could adopt a technology like the one they're developing to be able to help people visualize their future.
Right. I know my head is a little overwhelmed too, thinking, how do you go about creating that product?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And then her last bit about innovation and communities and cities. And boy, I guess that's a conversation for another day, because I want to know more.
Well, it's a testament to why we're so excited to work in this space and with people like Azra, that just dynamic women in technology, people in technology that are really changing. And we go back to the whole theme of innovation and the exciting opportunities that opens up.
Right. It's so true, Victor. And I think back to when we moved back to Silicon Valley from Illinois, and part of our quest was to really embrace technology, which is, cutting edge here. And so I'm really excited about this season and how we are going to be talking a lot about what's happening, what's new and exciting. And because quite honestly, that's what's been lifting us all up out of this pandemic.
Absolutely. And I can't help but think that there's so many more stories to tell and other people that we would love to talk to, so that if you have someone or you yourself are working in the space of technology and you're creating something innovative, something that you'd love to share and talk about, please reach out to me at victor@techgirlfinancial.com. Love to talk to you and possibly get you on the show.
Right. We want you all to know, all you women in tech and also men, that we are here to support those careers, lifestyles, and your road to financial independence.
So with that, thank you again, Asra, for being part of the program. We look forward to catching up with you sometime in the future and hearing what else you're developing. And we're all open to hear all those fresh new ideas that are being developed, not just here in Silicon Valley, but across the United States, across the world. Please reach out and let us know.
Yes, thank you.
So this is Tech Girl Financial Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again, and join us next time when we are going to continue this journey through innovation and talking to other dynamic people, as well as exploring ideas and insights in this space. So we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye.
If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future shows, please send an email to victor@techgirlfinancial.com or join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag AskTGF. We also encourage you to follow us on the Tech Girl Financial page on Facebook and connect with us on LinkedIn.
Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Tech Girl Financial and Cambridge Investment Research, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Discussions in the show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions.